Welcome to the You World Order Showcase podcast. My name is Jill Hart. I'm the founder of The Empathy Edge, and this show is built for up-and-coming life, health, and transformational coaches who are looking to share their coaching journey, grow their practice to change more lives, and be the change they want to see in the world. If you're an up-and-coming coach and would like to be featured on this podcast to talk about your coaching journey, struggles, and success stories, please visit jointheyouworldorder.com, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications of the daily content.
Hi, and welcome to the You World Order Showcase podcast. Today we have with us Ramona Galey. Ramona helps spiritual overthinkers find their purpose and reclaim their brilliance and leverage their personal assets into success, even if they think they don't have any personal assets. Ms. Galey is the founder of HeartSet Academy and the Alignment Circle Mastermind, which she facilitates with her spirit guide called Opra. Welcome to the show, Ramona. I've really been looking forward to interviewing you.
Thank you, Jill. I am so glad to be here, and I have been looking forward to our chat for quite a while now.
Yeah, this is going to be so exciting. So, why don't we start at the beginning and tell us your story? How did you get into coaching? Because I think it's a great story.
I actually got into coaching, life coaching, I called it, before. So everything in my life comes before Betty died and after Betty died, kind of like Jesus, right? So BC and AD. This is BB and AD. And so I actually became a life coach. I studied with Tony Robbins and Chloe Madonis. They used to have a training program. And so I've always really liked the idea of helping people. And I was in this 24-year relationship with the love of my life, Betty, and I really saw her as my only source of unconditional love. I had no spiritual paradigm whatsoever. I had no beliefs. I wouldn't have said there is no God, but I also wouldn't have said there is a God. I just didn't know, and I really didn't focus on it much or at all. And I would have been uncomfortable with a lot of the what we call the woo world, the woo woo world. So, but Betty got pancreatic cancer and died. She died in my arms, the little Dickens. And so I just I had lost my best friend. I'd lost my partner in crime. I'd lost my giggle mate, my everything. Everything revolved around her in my life at that point. So I was actually, trigger alert. I was actually planning on taking my own life, fully, not talking about it, just knowing that I was going to do it. And fate intervened. The phone rang, and it was her best friend Lordella, and I was crying, and I don't remember what I wasn't talking about taking my own life, but I was upset about these gold rings that we had lost, and it's too silly to even talk about how upset I was. I was really really over the edge, and and she said, "Wait, you have to stop thinking like that right now." And I said, "Well, yeah, I mean, sure, but I don't know how." I mean, I was 55 years old at that time, and I felt like I'd been trying to learn how to control my thoughts my whole life, very unsuccessfully. I did not know anything. I was totally unskilled on controlling my own thoughts. So she started telling me about Abraham Hicks. She says, "You ever heard of Abraham Hicks?" And I laugh at this now. I said, "No, is that a disease?" Because, like Braxton Hicks. And so that's how clueless I was. And so she started explaining it to me. We spent probably about an hour on the phone that very first day. And she sent me a bunch of CDs that she just happened, I'm going to do air quotes, just happened to have. She'd been listening to their subscription series for 25 years. And she would get the CDs, she'd listen to them quite a bit, and then she'd give them away, like to spread the word. And for some reason, she had never been able to give away these 2 years of CDs. They were in the back of a closet. She knew right where they were. So she mailed them to me, and she told me two books to get. One was Getting into the Vortex, which is a different book actually from The Vortex, and has guided meditations on a CD in the back. These days, I imagine it comes with just an MP4, like a link. But and then Ask and It Is Given. So I went right to the library because they were on the shelf, and I also ordered them from Amazon. But they took a couple of days, but they were on the shelf at the library, and I've checked many, many times ever since that day, that exact library, and those two books are always checked out. That day they were both waiting for me. So to me, these are signs that this was really meant to be exactly. I mean, the way it unfolded was just perfectly. And I started, I mean, I felt like I knew, I'm going to say I knew that my life depended on me learning this information because first of all, it resonated with me so deeply and so well, like it was just obvious. There was so much knowing, in the midst of all that angst and grief and bawling my eyes out and feeling like I couldn't breathe and all these like physical like what isness. Like I
Mm.
just knew that this was the answer. So I studied all of that really deeply, well, really ever since, but especially those first several years. And then eventually I started teaching and I went back into kind of a life coaching mode and I started teaching it. And then about 5 years ago, so that was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I was out walking with a friend. We were hiking in the Asheville area. We were there for a Abraham Hicks workshop, and we were there a couple days early. And she was telling me what was going on with her. She'd been taking some classes on light working in general, psychic, medium, channel, all this stuff. And I still was not aligned with that whole world. In fact, I would still say I'm still not, other than in this one way. And anyway, by the end of the conversation, I just knew that I was going to be following in Esther Hicks's footsteps. And that nobody was more surprised than me because Abraham says early on, I heard them say early on, Esther's really good at this because she was living life happily ever after and she had no strong opinions on everything. And I was not living my life happily ever after and I had strong opinions on everything. So I didn't know I didn't know that that would work for me. But all of a sudden, I just had this knowing and then some other friends had me do it with them once, and it was so successful. I started offering it to other people, and it just built and built and built and built. And then eventually, I decided I want to do this for a living. I want to do this in a way that I can really reach a lot of people and help as many people as possible to give them something that I didn't have. Because Esther didn't take private clients, she didn't do small group workshops. The only way you could talk to her and through her to Abraham was to go to one of their workshops, raise your hand, and try to get up on stage out of 1,000 people to get chosen. And so I succeeded in that once. And I asked the question that I was meant to ask. And I chewed on that answer for about 2 years. That all went into my development. Anyway, I've been doing it ever since. And it has just continued to unfold and unfold and unfold and get bigger and bigger and bigger and better and better and better. And so that brings us up to today. You're all caught up.
Wow. What a story. And what a journey. So where did your spirit guides come into this? How did you meet them?
Well, that first time when I realized that I was going to be doing this same work like Esther does, I didn't know exactly what that meant. But what I got with these two friends, they'd been listening to Abraham and going to workshops. I met them at an Abraham cruise, and so Bob and Flora. So they said, "Will you do it for us?" Because I told them we were at dinner. We were in Asheville at that really great Ethiopian restaurant in Asheville during that workshop weekend, and I had told them that I'd realized I was going to be doing it, but I didn't act on it. I didn't have any inspiration yet or guidance to act on it. I just said something about it and we went on with our dinner. But I remember Flora saying, "Will you do it with us?" I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." Well, wasn't the right time. Then they had a tornado that weekend. They had a tornado come to their neighborhood and put down dozens of 200-foot trees all around their house, but it didn't actually hit the house. And so I volunteered to go over. I suggested we have a chainsaw party because I had this chainsaw that this friend of mine had asked me to bring back to Georgia from Florida. I never did know why she asked me to do that, but I mean, I know why because then I had a chainsaw to go and help Bob with clearing these trees. And so I ended up spending the weekend there. And Flora said, "Well, will you do it with us?" I was like, "Oh, sure." Then the next day, she said, "Will you do it for us?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." She said, "Well, how about now?" And I was like, "Now?" Oh, okay. So, I mean, I still didn't know, what I mean, I didn't have a plan at all. We just sat down, I closed my eyes, I set an intention. She started asking questions. The first question she asked was, "What should we call you?" To my inner being that was I'm going to say theoretically in that moment it was theoretically present to answer questions. And I heard them say Oprah, but I was like, I was in such resistance. I was not going to claim that I was channeling Oprah Winfrey. Like I just was so uncomfortable with that. And so I said, "Oh, Oprah, Oprah." So we went with Oprah for that one session. But eventually, I had someone else ask them. I go and get Oprah, and then I bring them in, and I had him ask them like, "What is the real name?" Because I could tell that it wasn't the real name, and I didn't want to go with Oprah, so I wanted them to give me a different name. So they said, "No, it's Oprah. It's Oprah." And he knew how much resistance I had. I had already given him like a list of like sample questions to ask, because when I'm receiving Oprah, Ramona the human is kind of off to the side. It's like I can't like summon and ask questions and stuff. So he said, "Well, okay, so we call you Oprah. Do you care how we spell it?" And they were like, "No, spell it any way you want." So we decided to not spell it like Oprah Winfrey. And then he said, Ramona thinks that, whenever this subject has come up, she gets the distinct feeling that you're kind of l- laughing at her about it, or laughing about the subject, about the subject of the name. Can you? And they said yes. And he said, can you share the joke with us? And they're like, "Oh, sure." So Abraham, um, was receiving a hot seater once in front of a group, and that person was saying, I think it was a gentleman, and he was saying, "So, I wanted to ask this question about such and such a topic, and I heard all about it on the Oprah Winfrey show, and so I just wanted to know, oh, do you know Oprah? Like, do you know that show?" And Abraham said, "Yes, it's where we get all of our information." So that's the joke. That my inner being is where Esther's inner being gets all of their information. So that's the joke. It's got nothing to do with really truly Oprah Winfrey. She's never actually come through. Every once in a while somebody will come through. I'm not a medium or a psychic. I don't talk to dead people per se, but every once in a while somebody comes through because my client has summoned that person, and but never Oprah Winfrey. So it's got nothing to do with Oprah Winfrey, but it's got all to do with the joke about Oprah Winfrey. And I'm stuck with the name, like like they have just been very insistent from the very beginning. Yep, our name is Oprah. Okay, cool. Opra, no H.
I love that. And I love the story that goes
I tell
just
you what, it was the
hilarious.
first time that I had been receiving, and this was, I'm going to say, probably 4 or 5 weeks into my process. So Oprah had laughed at things, and I had laughed at things, but this was the first time, and it's happened since. It's a really delicious feeling when the client, Oprah, and I are all laughing at the same time, like hilariously, like uproariously, like as if we were like high on drugs or something. Like it's
Mhm.
this, like I'm laughing so hard I can't talk, I can't breathe. The three of us just sat there and laughed over this joke for, I swear, 30 or 40 seconds at least. We just sat there and laughed. And that was the first time that had happened. So it's just a lot of fun. It's very lighthearted. There's nothing serious about this whole stuff.
That's so good to know. I think people get caught up in the idea of channeling, and it has to be serious, and we got to get the answer, and we can't have fun with it. But I think that really all of this is about the experience of life, is having fun,
Yes.
enjoying it. We're not
Yes.
here to be miserable. We just make ourselves miserable on purpose.
Exactly. We do it to ourselves. One of the first quotes that I remember when I was first listening to them 10 years ago, I heard them say, "You came here eagerly." And do you know I bawled like a baby for like an hour after I heard that? I mean, I just lost it because I had spent 55 years trying to prove that I was worthy of something, trying to figure stuff out, trying to be of service to people, all in this very heavy way. And I came here eagerly. Wait a minute. Hold a paradigm shift. Wait a minute. That doesn't match at all. Only I felt the resonance of it. I felt the truth of it. And, they say the purpose of life is joy. The basis of life is freedom. The purpose of life is joy. And the outcome of that is the growth. I had always been so growth oriented in an effort to prove myself. And as soon as I made that very subtle shift, focus on joy instead of growth, and as soon as like within a second of me making that shift, my growth took off, and I had always been growth oriented. I went into therapy when I was 18. I went to 12-step meetings when I didn't have any money. I would just go just to talk to people about how I was feeling. I didn't know how I was feeling. I mean, I was a mess. I was a hot mess when I was younger. And so I was always interested in growth, and I still am to this day. I have to remind myself over and over, the purpose is joy. If I'm not having fun, I don't want to be doing it. If it doesn't feel good, it's not right for me. If it doesn't feel good, it's not true for me. So it's a complete like 180 turn away from all of the discipline and the harshness and the trying really hard and holding your tongue just right and putting in more hours and all this stuff that we do in our culture. It's so not helpful.
Even in the spiritual world, in the woo community, if you will, there's
Yes.
like you have to do your rituals a certain way, and you have to wait for
Yes.
the exact time in order for something to happen, and
Yes.
everything has to be like it's supposed to be. And when you have beings come in to your realm, if you know who they are, like my spiritual guide's name is Joan.
Joan. Okay. Hi,
She
Joan.
has unicorns that she brings with her. But the first time I met her, I asked her what she looked like, and it was like a Monet painting. It was
Ooh.
all or Henry Matisse, how he has those women with the lipsticks like going off their face on riding on a blue bicycle. Just got a like, and her yellow scarf is flying by. I mean, that was just like, okay, so that's Joan, and she's got a bunch of unicorns that hang around.
That's
Lets me pet
hilarious.
sometimes. it
That's wonderful.
it's just it's you can have fun. You don't have to be so serious about all of this. And I think that's kind of the main message. And it kind of goes to your overthinking.
Yes.
Just going to
Yes,
talk
the
about that a little
spiritual
bit.
overthinker. Yeah, so when we start down a road of personal development, and I'm always just shocked at what a small percentage of people, like I was reading statistics the other day, only 40% of the United States adult population has ever bought a personal development book, like a self-help book about, not about building an engine or something, but about like working on ourselves, focusing on ourselves, wanting to get a different result or to feel better, whatever that personal development is. For only 40%, and only about 4% of the US population, adult population, actually meditates on a regular basis. In fact, 14% have tried it once, and
Yeah.
4%
Well,
stick with it.
this isn't going to do anything for you.
Well, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh my gosh, everybody's just out there doing the best they can without any support. That's what that means to me. Without any support, you're trying to just figure it out and just get through it somehow. And oh, wow, I feel so blessed that I am in this space rather than that space, because 55 years in that space was plenty enough for me. Like I was done with that one way or the other. And I'm glad it went, the one way instead of the other. But yeah, so we laugh all the time in this alignment circle mastermind group that I've got. It's a small group, and everybody gets to talk to Oprah one-on-one, within the small group setting on Zoom. And we laugh. I'm going to say we laugh at least 25% of the time, the whole group, or some aspect of it. Usually the whole group joins in no matter what it is, because it's funny, you know. And in the Abraham Hicks community, we have a concept called the spiritual happy face sticker, and that's where that's comes from a time that Abraham said, if you were driving down the road in your car and you looked at your gas gauge and your gas gauge was on empty, you wouldn't just put a sticker over it, a happy face sticker over it, and just pretend you had gas. And it's the same with your spiritual, whatever it is. And so if you're overthinking, which really doesn't feel good, but yet most of what we're taught in our society to do about anything, plan, strategize, business plans, smart goals, discipline, they're all some form of overthinking, and it doesn't feel good. And so if we just pretend we're feeling good, like with this big fake smile, That's called the spiritual happy face sticker. And so we're just pretending that we feel good. And that's a good bit of what goes on either in in the spiritual community or even in the secular community. People are just kind of trying to get through their lives and pretend. And this is all about actually feeling good, actually being happy as a person, actually loving our lives, loving our bodies, like being in tune with what we actually want, loving the fact that we have desires. These are all things that are can be overwhelming to someone who's never had this shift, I call it heart set. Everybody else calls it mindset. I call it heart set because it's
It
actually about
is.
getting into your heart. So it's a heart set shift. And that's what I teach all day long. That's my bread and butter, baby.
It is so important to get out of our heads and into our bodies and our hearts specifically, but even our gut is important.
Yes.
People wander around. I know I was like this too. I wandered around for decades
Yeah.
thinking, you know, it's whatever I think is I think, therefore I am. That's so not true. You
Yeah.
exist, therefore you are.
Exactly. Oh, well
And
said. I love that.
and and what you're feeling in your body is just as important as what's going on in your mind, and the two of them are in communication all of the time. It's just the brain has we train our brains from a very young age, I think, to ignore what's going on in your body. That's the
Hmm.
realm of the doctor
Right.
will fix it. But if
Or the
you've ever
realm of
gone to the
nobody.
doctor,
Or the realm of nobody. Like, don't touch my body. My body's off limits.
yeah,
Some people
yeah,
actually go that far. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Well, and
yeah.
the overthinking, we can be thinking about meditating. We can be thinking about how our bodies feel. We can be thinking about what we want and thinking that we're actually doing the work, as we call it, and still not actually gaining any momentum towards where we want to go because we're so trained to overthink. And so, I like to think of the mind and the heart body balance because the brain is really good at remembering. It's based in the past. It's designed to protect us. It's very important. I don't ever want to like minimize the function and the importance and the vitality of the brain. The heart is where our guidance is. The heart knows the future. And it doesn't put it into words. You don't write it down because that's the brain's hemisphere. But the heart hemisphere knows the future and knows what we want and knows how to get us there. But we have to actually trust that instinct or inspiration or intuition, whatever you want to call it. Notice all those words start with in, right? Inspiration, impulse, instinct, intuition, in, in, in our hearts, in our breath, in our bodies. And when we get those two things balanced and get really in alignment, all of a sudden we have knowing beyond our wildest dreams, beyond any logical way to explain it. But you got to get out of the head. You got to be willing to say, like I have one rule, one skill, one habit that I teach. One rule: do whatever it takes to feel good. And you
Healing.
gotta give yourself permission to do that. If you think you're not worthy of feeling good, if you think you can't trust yourself to do things that feel good and then not be a bad person or something, if all these different reasons why we might resist that rule, but if you can accept that one rule and start acting on it, you'll see changes within 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, you'll see those changes, and those changes will go on for the rest of your life if you just do the one rule, one skill, one habit. So yeah, it's all about getting out of the head. Starts right there.
And that comes back kind of full circle to focus, which is allowing yourself to focus not on your thoughts, but to focus on your feeling and not have a thought about your feeling, just to feel, which
Yeah.
is very different.
Yeah. Well, and also, and vice versa, the feeling tells you what you're focusing on. So if I am focusing on, somebody just told me I'm ugly or stupid or something, and if I'm focused on that, I'm going to feel awful in my body. And
Mhm.
when I feel that, that's my guidance telling me, hey, you're off track. You're believing a lie. You're focusing on something that's not true. You're focusing on something that's not wanted. Focus away. And so when I really start tuning into my body, I can start to tell where I'm focusing by by my by my guidance, right? If I don't feel my guidance, if I'm not in touch with my body, I will start to see the results of my focus. Car accidents, houses burning down, losing your job, like all these different things that can happen when we're not focused on where we want to go. So as long as we're focused on what we want, on feeling good, and not focused on whatever tragedy just happened or the war that's all the way on the other side of the world or whatever it is, those things, those unwanted things, those what we call low vibration things, if we focus on those, we get more low vibration. When we focus on high vibration things like our own desires, as long as it feels good, or, kittens or puppy dogs, we focus on something fun or beautiful or desired in some way or another. Now we're going towards where we want. And if we do it well, building momentum, then our whole life starts to go towards wanted. And it really is, it's a skill to develop and to remember about building that momentum in focus. But yeah, it's everything. That focus is everything. And it's totally within our control. Nobody else can force us to focus somewhere else.
Yeah. And the more you focus, the more evidence you have that you find coming up around you of
Absolutely.
that your brain wants to validate all your thoughts. And the more that you focus on the things that you do want, the more evidence your brain will find that, oh yeah, that's totally, we're going to do it. It's
Yeah.
just, it's kind of magical how that works.
It is. It is. It's very magical and it's very true. Very true.
And all of these come back to authenticity, to
Yes.
being.
Yeah. I love authenticity. I talk a lot about authenticity. So, and I always like to just be really clear with a new audience that authenticity, I don't mean honesty when I talk about authenticity. So I used to be, and I still am extremely honest, extremely direct. Like I don't like I'm just very, very direct and very honest, in the literal sense of the word. And yet I was not authentic. I can see that so clearly when I look back over my life. I was very uncomfortable being seen. I was very uncomfortable being who I was unless I had already vetted the person I was with, like really close friends and trusted family members. They got to see the real me. Everybody else saw a facade, an armored facade. And so I really honor the difference between honesty and authenticity. When we are being authentic, our authentic selves, now we can have, let's say, a sales conversation, or now we can make a video very comfortably. We can love the way we look and the way we sound enough to make videos, like to start a business, for example. Or we can have direct, respectful interactions with our children because we're very comfortable with who we are and what we are. And so then we can very authentically present that to someone else in a way that they can hear. In other words, we're much less likely when we're being authentic, we're never going to be like defensive, for example, or accusative or blaming or feeling guilty about stuff. Like it determines the entire experience we have. When we are authentic and we genuinely love ourselves, we're probably also letting in the love of source, because we don't have to create love. We already are love and we're surrounded by love. In our high level of authenticity, we can feel it, we can transmit it, we can receive it, we can be it. And so that's where love starts. That's where spirituality starts. That's where passion starts. That's where success comes from. Authenticity. Who am I? Who are you? And what do we want? That's authentic.
Reminds me of boundaries. Some people talk about boundaries. I think boundaries are just being authentic to yourself and respecting the authenticity of others, because that's
Absolutely.
the other side of that coin. You can be who you are, but you need to be able to let others be who they are too and appreciate them for how they are. And
Absolutely. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And think about, just feel the resonance of the difference between thinking about, okay, I've got to have better boundaries and I've got to honor other people's boundaries.
Mhm.
That feels kind of intangible. It feels like a
Right.
moving target. It feels like externally imposed. Like I'm going to figure it
Gotta make
out
my
and then it's going to
list.
change. Yeah, I got to make a list. Exactly. I got to practice and hold my tongue just right. If I'm being authentic, then I'm not going to violate somebody else's boundaries. If I'm truly authentic, it's just naturally going to happen. And I'm going to defend my own boundaries well enough. Sometimes I don't have to defend my boundaries at all if I'm with other authentic people. Or if I do need to defend a boundary, it's not going to come out angry or hateful or violent. It's going to
It
come
just
out
repels
beautiful.
people.
Yeah, it's going to be perfect because authenticity is who we are. And
Mhm.
when we really start to accept that we really are perfect just the way we are, the real, our, fully aligned selves, oh my gosh, it's a game changer. It's a game changer.
It really is. It's like there just being you attracts certain people. At the same time, it repels others
Yes.
that you're not supposed to interact with. And we're not here to interact with everyone. There's just too many people. So you have to be able to know to know who you are in order to
Yeah.
know who you're supposed to be here to interact with.
Well, you know how autistic children, part of what they're dealing with is the inability to screen certain types of stimuli or any type of stimuli maybe. So
Mhm.
one of the things that we excel at as humans, which is it's a double-edged sword, we excel at screening things that we've deemed not important for whatever reason. So,
Mhm.
if a train goes by every day, by the fourth or fifth day, I'm not going to hear it. I'm not going to notice it. I used to have roosters. I didn't have them, but my neighbors, I used to live in a neighborhood that had roosters. And well, in the first couple of days, 4 o'clock in the morning, the rooster crowed. By the fifth or sixth day, I didn't hear it anymore. I slept right through it. And I'm a very light sleeper, but my brain screened it for me as
Mhm.
being unimportant or not applying to me or well known already. It's not a danger. Like for whatever reason, our brains screen things. So if you think about it, if you're not being completely authentic to yourself, and if you're just taking on other people's stuff, you're kind of being like socially autistic or emotionally or vibrationally autistic. You're not screening the things that don't apply to you. And so it's the same with focus. Focus is the ability to focus on what I want, knowing that my system will screen out anything that doesn't match that. That's part, I mean, we teach it in terms of like law of attraction, which sounds like it's outside ourselves, but that's one of the ways it works is we
Mhm.
screen out the things that don't match. Just like, you buy your first red car in your whole life, all of a sudden there are red cars everywhere and you never noticed them before. You would have guessed, oh, almost all cars are either white or black or silver, right? It's a, whoa, there's a bunch of red cars. Or you buy one of those Hummers or, you whatever it is, all of a sudden you see it everywhere. And that's that magic that you're talking about that our brains do for us. It's also the magic of law of attraction. Whatever we focus on, we get more of. It's a really basic concept that really stands us in good stead when we start really getting it.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you work with people?
Well, I work with people either privately or in the small group, the alignment circle that I was telling you about.
Mhm.
The I People come to me in some sort of pain. Usually it's the pain of overthinking, kind of as a general category, because if you've already started doing your spiritual development, your personal development, you usually get some good results right away. Like, oh, this is really great. This is so much better. I'm really glad I did this. And you start practicing it, you start doing it. At some point, most of us come into a situation where we feel like we've lost all our momentum, or we feel like we're being blocked by something. We can't figure out what it is. The things that we've just been working on and practicing, the skills, all of a sudden they don't seem to work as well. We've hit a glass ceiling or whatever it is. That can be very uncomfortable. It's not like the pain of somebody who's starving to death, but it's still very real to us because we have these desires, we have a mission, we have a purpose in life. And when we start to blow on that little ember that might have been just tucked away for 40 or 50 or 60 years, and we start to say, wait a minute, I'm actually feeling good enough that I can imagine fulfilling my purpose, but I may not know what it is, but I can feel it within me and it starts to glow and it gets bigger and bigger. So now I have like a frustration and impatience, like I really want to get to it. And that's when people tend to come to me. They've got that level of desire and impatience or frustration. A lot of people use the word frustrated when they first come. And there's a whole other level. There's an infinite amount that's available to all of us above that space that I've just described. It's just a slightly different set of skills and a slightly different approach, and that's what I teach. And so that's how I work with people. Some people prefer to come privately, and some people come in the group. The group is very, very, very powerful. I've only been doing the group for about a year. I've been doing private for 5 years. The group, I've seen just tremendous results from people coming in the group, because one person asks a question, then another person might say, well, I didn't think I had a question this time, but that reminded me of this. And so but you asked it so much more eloquently than I would have, but now I've got this question. And then a third person might come in and say, oh my gosh, I'm so appreciating this conversation because I want to know about this. And they'll raise, so we're constantly raising the vibration and the level and the understanding. So we have these incredibly expansive conversations. When I say we, I mean them with Opra. So I start the meeting, and then Opra comes on board and they talk directly to Opra. And so Oprah is just a stand-in for their inner being. And Oprah will frequently say, they'll say something to a client, and the client will say, oh my gosh, how did you know that? Like, I've never told anybody that, or something like that. And Oprah will always say, your inner being told us. We told Ramona. Ramona figured out how to put it into words, because we don't use words, but she does. So she figured out how to translate it into words, and then she told you. But it came from you. So now you just want to get used to, get the skill going, get the receptive, expansive space to be able to receive your own inner being. You used to know how to do it, but you've trained yourself out of it. You let them, the peanut gallery, train you out of it. And it's okay that you did that. Never any judgment or anything like that. But here's where we want you to feel what it feels like to be receiving your inner guidance, and then you can start to feel it on your own. So that's how I work with people. They ask questions of Oprah. Oprah tells me what to say. I put it into words and I say it to them, and they get better. And I get better too. Like, I get Oprah all the time, right? So I've received just huge
All the
benefit from the
channels.
whole thing. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. That's funny. I get all the channels. That's great.
um, okay.
I'm gonna have to remember that one. That was good.
All right. And you also have a HeartSet private podcast for
Yes.
people that want to know more. What
Yeah.
do you have on there?
So when I started doing podcasts as a guest, I'm not sure I remember exactly how this came up, but it came to me, the idea of having, so Oprah has their way of saying things, and they read the vibration of the person asking their question. They're very tuned in, tapped in, turned on. And then there's me, Ramona the human, as I like to call myself. And my expansiveness has just been just going through the roof. My understanding of all this stuff, after receiving and translating on Oprah's behalf for 5 years now, there's a lot that I can talk a lot more than Oprah does, because when Oprah's talking, they don't really talk, but when they're showing me, then I have to translate. It's a little bit limited in the word department. Like, there's huge vibration. Like, sometimes we'll all just sit in a group and everybody's just like zoned out. We're all just really vibing. We're just really vibing together. But there's not much words. In fact, and when Oprah first started, they would give one word answers a lot of times. So the couple of us together is not real wordy, but I can be wordy all I want, right? So because I can just say what I think. So the idea is that complete lay people. You don't have to be an experienced podcaster or have, special equipment or anything, but lay people come on. They pick one topic. I've got a list of 60 or 100 topics, or they can bring their own topic, whatever is important to them. They come in and they ask me questions about that one topic. And we label the podcast whatever the topic is. We've covered self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, clarity, authenticity, like lots of different subjects. And so I wanted to create like a searchable database almost of, and the idea is that if one person asks about authenticity, we'll get one conversation. If another person asks the same questions or similar questions about the same topic, authenticity, they're going to get different answers because the answers change on depending on who's asking the question. And it also depends on, how I'm feeling that day. But I get to just kind of speak off the top of my head. I don't have to sit down and write it down. It's not one of the books. I've got one book out and I'm working on my second book, but writing is very different from just speaking from your heart. And so we do these like about approximately half-hour sessions, one on each topic, with anybody who wants to join in is welcome. Come and ask questions and we'll have this really great conversation. And invariably the person that the guest, I call them the visiting host and I'm the permanent guest. It's kind of a flip-flop on the regular podcast, right? But so they come in and they ask me these questions. We have these really great conversations. And at the end, either during the podcast or afterwards, they invariably say, mind blown. You just came at this topic that everybody talks about from a completely unexpected direction, and it's really opened my eyes. And so that's all Oprah's influence, because Oprah shows us the truth, the vibrational truth about things, and it's so rarely in lockstep with whatever the mainstream is saying about that thing, right? It's just really different. So it turned out to be that I thought I was just going to do 3 or 4, for fun, but it has, I mean, I think I'm up to about 20 sessions now, 20 episodes, and it's not published anywhere. It's totally private. And so I've sent you the link. You're welcome to share it with your audience. And if they want to come and listen, and if they want to come and be on the show, they're welcome to. And everything's, contained in there in that link. And it's just fun. We laugh and we just make lighthearted uh, essence of things that a lot of people take very seriously. Neurodivergence, medical diagnoses. These are things, some other topics that we've covered. So these can be very heavy topics, and we will just show you how to lighten up on it. Because as soon as you lighten up, it gets better. It's magical how much better it gets. So that's what the podcast is about, the HeartSet Private Podcast.
I love that. I love that. It reminds me of, it's like you're the light on the top of the candle.
Cool. I love that. Thank you.
So how do people get in touch with you? I know they can go to the podcast, but
yeah, RamonaGaley.com is the best place to find me. If you're looking for social media, you're probably only going to find me on Facebook or YouTube. I don't really do much in the way of Pinterest or Instagram or Twitter or what are all those other ones. So yeah, Facebook. But the best place to find me is RamonaGaley.com. And that has my contact information if you want to write to me. And if you want to join some of my social media groups, or if you want to just watch some of the podcasts that I've been on, I have a whole page of guest appearances, like kind of highlights of my guest appearances, including some Oprah appearances. There's a 3-part one with Jen that she comes and talks to Oprah on the 2nd and the 3rd episode of that 3-part series. Very, very impactful set there. So yeah, and this podcast right now that we're doing will be on that page. So yeah.
So excited.
Yeah,
this
you.
has been a great chatting with you, Ramona. What's
Thank
the
you.
one thing that you hope the audience takes away from our conversation?
Do whatever it takes to feel good. And there might be all kinds of resistance that your brain will throw up against that idea, but I'll just give you a little hint ahead. The one skill, you only have to remember one rule: do whatever it takes to feel good. There's only one skill to really hone: learn to discern what actually feels good. And then the one habit: allow things to unfold naturally. They go together perfectly. And once you start applying that in your life, you can do it right now. Start right now. pick something easy. Should I have a glass of water or not? Should I go for a walk or not? Should I turn left here or right? Do whatever it takes to feel good means choosing the option between two options. Choose which one feels good, not which one pays better or costs less or is more socially approved or more legal or more moral or more ethical. Choose the one that feels better, and you're starting already to train yourself to go back to what you knew as a baby, what you were feeling in your body, and to trust it. Do whatever it takes to feel good.
I'll leave it with that. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us for this episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. Be sure to like the episode and let us know in the comments what your biggest takeaway was. You can support the podcast and grow your business or coaching practice by taking advantage of the tools offered in our store, which you can find at heartlifecoach.com/store. See you next time as we hear from another life, health, or transformational coach being the change they seek in the world.